She thought it was just a crack in the cliff, until the stone shifted under her hand and revealed a hidden door sealed for decades. Inside, she found something so valuable it could change her entire life, and evidence that someone else had already tried to claim it, and they weren't done searching. Mara Elling felt the mountain long before she saw it. The hush of the wind, the distant crack of shifting ice, the heaviness in the air that always found its way into her chest. She wasn't just walking the ridge. She was walking through memories she never asked for. The cliffs had taken people she loved, offered silence when she needed answers, and yet they were the only place where she still felt like herself. Today, though, something in that silence felt different. Not threatening, simply expectant. As if the mountain had been holding its breath, waiting for her alone. Her boots crunched through the thin morning snow as she scanned the familiar slope. The world was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears until your heartbeat becomes the loudest thing you hear. For months, she'd lived in this strange limbo, grieving a past she wouldn't talk about, and working a patch of land that barely yielded anything. But the mountains didn't care about human sorrow. They revealed things when they chose, not when she wanted answers. And today, beneath a pale veil of snow, she noticed a line carved too perfectly into stone, a flaw in the mountain's skin. She knelt, brushing snow away with trembling gloves. The line wasn't natural. It was too straight, too clean. Her breath hitched, uncertainty mingling with a spark of curiosity she'd tried hard to bury. After losing so much, she preferred predictable things. Firewood stacked evenly, her dog lying beside her stove, the sunrise always coming from the same place. This hidden seam, felt like the opposite of predictable. Her dog, Rowan, padded close, ears pricked with quiet warning. Mara wasn't sure whether to back away or dig deeper, but her hands were already clearing more snow. When her fingers found the cold edge of metal, a hinge, she jerked back. Metal meant intent. Intent meant danger. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "What are you, mountain?" she whispered, as though the ridge might answer. Rowan whined softly, nudging her elbow with his cold nose, grounding her. Mara forced herself closer, pressing gloved fingers against the stone. The hinge wasn't rusted. Someone had built this to last. She pushed carefully, and the stone shifted a hair. Something warm, impossibly warm, breathed out. Her stomach tightened. Caves didn't breathe. People did. She felt a prickle crawl across her arms despite the cold. This door wasn't merely old, it was sealed with purpose. For a moment, she thought of turning away, going home, tending her wood stove, pretending this never existed. But Mara had never been good at pretending. Not when her husband died in these mountains. Not when grief hollowed her out. And not when something extraordinary lay right beneath her hand. She pressed harder. The stone door groaned, scraping open just wide enough to spill muted amber light across the snow. The light felt wrong, like a memory someone left burning too long. Mara slipped inside before she could lose her nerve, Rowan following silently at her heel. The chamber swallowed them whole. The air was thick, warm, almost humid. She tugged off her glove and felt the temperature with her bare fingers. It was real. Her flashlight beam swept across the carvings on the walls, symbols spiraling like constellations trapped in rock. Strange, ancient, beautiful. Her pulse thudded in her throat. She'd always thought of the mountain as unchanged, eternal. But this room felt like its beating heart, hidden away from every pair of eyes except hers. Rowan growled low, uncertain. Mara followed his gaze toward the center of the room. A chest sat on a pedestal, dust-covered, but intact. Not wood, metal, tarnished but strong. The same symbols carved into its lid pulsed faintly in the amber glow. She approached cautiously, her breath shallow. Her emotions tangled, fear sharpened by awe softened by exhaustion. Life had rarely given her mysteries. Mostly, it had given her burdens. But here, in this quiet chamber, something felt like it wanted to be discovered, needed to be discovered. She rested a hand on the chest. It was warm. The warmth startled her. Metal didn't hold heat like that. It almost felt alive. She glanced around the chamber. The carvings on the walls seemed to ripple subtly, as if responding to her presence. "This is insane," she whispered, though a small, trembling part of her wanted to believe magic was real. She rotated the dial on the chest, guided by an instinct she couldn't explain. A soft click answered her touch. Then another. Rowan whimpered, pressing against her leg. Mara froze. The chest vibrated faintly under her palm. Her breath stilled. Something was unlocking. The lid opened with a gentle exhale. Mara's heart stuttered. Inside, wrapped in old cloth, lay objects the color of sunlight. She unwound the fabric slowly, revealing long, slender bars, gold, but not like any she'd ever seen. They were engraved, almost ceremonial, untouched by age. Her throat tightened. Wealth this pure felt unreal, almost holy. She wasn't someone meant to hold riches, not someone who lived off dried herbs and patchwork clothes. But here she was, cradling gold worth more than her entire world. She brushed her thumb over a symbol. Why here? Why her? Her thoughts shattered when Rowan stiffened. He stared toward the stone door, hackles raised, tail rigid. Mara felt a bolt of dread. She extinguished her flashlight instantly. The chamber plunged into suffocating darkness. For a moment, all she heard was Rowan's breathing and the faint hum of the carvings. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, measured. They weren't hers. They weren't from the mountain. Someone else had found the door. Someone else knew. Her heart hammered painfully. She pressed herself against the wall, clutching the gold against her chest. The shadows felt smaller than before. She tasted fear in the back of her throat, metallic and bitter. Memories of men who'd once roamed these mountains flashed in her mind. Hunters with cold eyes, prospectors who disappeared without a trace, strangers who cared more about treasure than human life. Rowan whimpered quietly, his body shaking. Mara felt rage spark beneath her fear. Rage at the thought of someone taking what she'd found. Rage at being cornered after everything life had already taken from her. She silently willed Rowan to stay calm. The footsteps grew louder. A voice murmured, "It should be here. The map led right to it." The door rattled. Stone scraped. Someone cursed under their breath. Mara pressed deeper into the shadows, her fingers trembling around the fabric-wrapped gold. She didn't care about money, but she cared about danger, and whoever was trying to get inside wasn't here to admire the carvings. Rowan gave a soft bark, too soft to echo, but loud enough to draw silence from outside. She held her breath. "Did you hear that?" a man whispered. A second voice answered, "Someone beat us here." Cold dread spread through her veins. She had one exit. So did they. The door creaked open. A thin slice of icy daylight spilled into the chamber. A tall figure stepped inside, flashlight sweeping across the room. The beam skimmed close, too close, to where she was hidden. She pressed her back against the carvings, feeling the ancient stone pulse. Her heart thudded violently. Rowan remained still, trained by years of survival. The man moved farther inside, murmuring, "Search every corner." Mara tightened her grip on the gold, mind racing. She couldn't fight 3 grown men. She couldn't outrun them in a straight tunnel. But she could outthink them. The mountain had raised her well. The beam passed overhead again. Mara waited for the smallest break in their pattern, for the men to separate. When 2 turned their lights toward a deep fissure in the wall, she moved. Not running, gliding, silent as snow. Rowan followed close, paws soft on the dust-covered floor. Her body remembered survival long before her mind did. She slipped toward the entrance tunnel, hugging the darkest path. She reached the threshold just as one man turned, suspicion flickering across his posture. Her pulse spiked. A pebble under her boot betrayed her. It clattered. The man spun. "Hey!" Mara bolted into the tunnel, chest clutched tightly against her. Rowan sprinted beside her, barking sharply to confuse their pursuers. Shouts erupted behind her, loud enough to shake dust from the ceiling. "She has it! Don't let her get away!" Their boots thundered against the stone. Mara pushed herself harder. She'd grown up climbing cliffs and racing avalanches. But fear made her clumsy. Her shoulder scraped against the rough wall. Pain jolted down her arm. She didn't stop. The tunnel narrowed ahead, turning into a jagged path barely wide enough to squeeze through. The cold air hit her face as she neared the exit. Snow glittered outside, a deceptive calm against the chaos behind her. Rowan leapt out first, disappearing into the white blur. Mara followed, sliding onto the snowy slope. She stumbled, but caught herself. Her lungs burned, but she forced herself forward. Behind her, the men reached the tunnel mouth, silhouetted like jagged shadows. One of them shouted, "Stop!" A gun glinted in his hand. Mara ducked instinctively, adrenaline flooding her veins. She didn't look back. The mountain was her only ally. She fled into the trees, knowing their layout by instinct alone. The branches clawed at her sleeves. Her boots sank into pockets of deep snow. Rowan barked ahead, guiding her toward the hidden ravine. She clutched the gold so tightly her fingers ached. She didn't want the fortune. It felt cursed, heavy with responsibility. But she couldn't leave it for men who would destroy anyone to claim it. A gunshot cracked, tearing through the air. Snow exploded beside her. She flinched, stumbled, but kept running. The forest echoed with pursuit. Every breath was a countdown. The ravine appeared, a deep crease in the earth, lined with jagged ice. Mara skidded to a stop, chest heaving. She couldn't climb down safely with the gold. She couldn't cross on foot. Rowan barked from a lower ledge, having already found a narrow path. She followed, sliding carefully, gripping exposed roots. The cold bit through her coat, through her skin, into her bones. Voices shouted above. Boots crunched snow. She ducked under a frozen overhang just as the men reached the ravine's edge. She pressed Rowan close, willing him silent. Her breath fogged in tiny bursts. "Where the hell did she go?" one man growled. Flashlights scanned the ravine, beams slicing through the icy gloom. Mara closed her eyes, praying the overhang masked their heat signatures. The men muttered, frustrated. "We'll spread out. She can't hide forever." Their footsteps faded slowly, reluctantly. Mara didn't move, not even when the cold numbed her fingers. Only when the forest returned to its natural silence did she finally exhale. Rowan licked her hand gently, grounding her again. She opened her eyes. The gold in her arms seemed to pulse with meaning and warning. Mara shifted deeper beneath the icy shelter, curling around Rowan for warmth. She had survived the mountains her whole life, but this felt different, bigger. Someone powerful wanted what she held, someone willing to chase her into the storm without hesitation. She stared at the wrapped gold, its weight resting against her ribs. $15 million, maybe more. Enough to rebuild her life, but also enough to ruin it. Snow fell softly outside, muffling the world. Mara pressed her forehead to Rowan's. "We're not done," she whispered. "Not even close." And somewhere above them, the men kept searching. The cold crept deeper into Mara's bones as she waited beneath the icy overhang, listening for any hint of returning footsteps. The wind brushed snow into her hiding place, whispering along the frozen walls like a warning. Rowan pressed close, sharing what little warmth he had. Her heart finally slowed from its frantic pace, but her mind stayed sharp, unraveling everything she had seen. The chamber, the carvings, the warm air. It all felt older than the mountain itself. And the men, they hadn't been surprised by the symbols. They'd been looking for them, searching with intent. She realized with a sinking feeling that she had stumbled into someone else's obsession. She glanced down at the wrapped gold in her arms. It seemed to glow faintly through the cloth, though she knew that must have been an illusion from the pale winter light. But the weight felt strange. Not just heavy, but meaningful, as if every bar carried a history she wasn't meant to touch. She wondered how many people had died searching for it. How many secrets had been buried in these cliffs long before she was born. Rowan lifted his head, ears twitching. Mara followed his gaze toward the ravine ridge. Snow shifted there, faintly, as if disturbed. They couldn't stay much longer. Carefully, she climbed out from beneath the overhang, her movements quiet and deliberate. The ravine stretched before her like a frozen wound carved into the earth. She chose a narrow path along the wall, climbing slowly, boots scraping against slick ice. Rowan followed, steady as always. Halfway up, she paused, scanning the tree line above. No shadows moved. The storm clouds overhead churned silently, promising more snow by nightfall. Mara tightened the strap around the gold. She needed shelter, somewhere the men wouldn't expect her to go, somewhere only she knew. Her grandmother's weather station, abandoned, hidden, forgotten, just like she'd wanted to be. When she reached the top of the ravine, she crouched low behind a fallen pine and surveyed the slope. Her breath caught when she saw fresh footprints crossing the clearing, 3 sets, deep from the weight of gear. They'd searched here already, but they hadn't found her. Not yet. Mara moved swiftly through the brush, weaving between trees with the practiced rhythm of someone raised by the mountain itself. The wind picked up, howling through the branches. It masked her steps, but carried the risk of erasing tracks too quickly. Rowan stayed ahead, a silent guide through the maze of snow. She reached a ridge overlooking the valley, her chest heaving with cold air. From here she could see everything: the trees, the cliffs, the faint trail of smoke from her cabin far below. It looked small, fragile, defenseless. A part of her ached at the sight. That cabin had been the only place that ever felt like home, the only piece of her life she'd fought to keep after losing her husband. Now the mountain that once protected her felt on the verge of turning against her. Rowan nudged her leg, as if to say she wasn't alone. Mara forced herself onward. The old weather station sat perched on a rocky ledge half buried in snow. Her grandmother had run it decades ago, long before Mara was born. A tiny shack with a wind-beaten roof and a leaning antenna tower. Most people didn't even know it existed anymore. Those who did thought it had collapsed long ago. Mara pushed the door open with a grunt, dislodging a drift of snow that spilled across the floor. The room smelled of dust, rust, and distant memories. Perfect. Rowan trotted inside, circling once before curling near the corner. Mara shut the door behind them and let herself breathe. She set the wrapped gold on the dusty counter and leaned heavily against the wall. Her hands trembled, adrenaline finally burning itself out. For a moment, she simply listened. The whistle of wind squeezing through the warped boards, Rowan's steady breathing, the distant groan of shifting ice. Everything sounded normal, but normal meant nothing now. She unwrapped the gold again, examining the symbols. They were beautiful, delicate patterns etched with purpose. Not decorative, functional. They reminded her of the carvings in the chamber, almost like a matching language, a system, a map. It dawned on her. The gold wasn't treasure, it was a key. Her breath caught at the realization. A key to what? The chamber had felt unfinished, like a single piece of something larger. The mountain hid more than one secret. She could feel it. And the men following her probably knew exactly what that larger secret was. She pressed her fingers to her forehead, mind racing. If the gold wasn't meant to be stolen, if it was meant to unlock something, then by taking it, she had become part of a much bigger game. Rowan growled softly. Mara snapped into focus. Footsteps crunched outside the shack. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. Someone had followed her. She extinguished the lantern immediately, plunging the shack into darkness. Rowan rose silently beside her, muscles taut. Mara peered through a sliver in the boarded window. A shadow moved outside, slow, steady, careful. Not a wanderer, not a ranger, a hunter. Someone patient enough to track her through a storm, someone skilled enough to move without alerting even the birds. Mara held her breath. The shadow paused at the door, listening. She tightened her grip on her mountain knife. Her heart thudded violently. If they forced entry, she would have to fight. But instead of knocking or breaking in, the shadow moved away from the door, circling the shack with deliberate caution. They were checking windows, blind spots, exits. Professional, not reckless. Mara clenched her jaw. The worst kind of enemy. She crouched, motioning Rowan to stay low. She couldn't run now, not with the shack surrounded, not with the gold. She had to wait for a mistake, a distraction, a moment where the hunter broke their pattern. Outside, the soft crunch of boots stopped again. She listened for breathing, for whispers, for anything. Nothing came. The silence was suffocating. Minutes dragged like hours. Her legs ached from crouching. A thin line of cold seeped under the door. Rowan's ears flicked at every shift in the wind. Then, finally, she heard another sound. Voices, distant but approaching. More of them. The hunter outside whistled softly, signaling them. Mara's stomach twisted. They weren't searching the mountain randomly. They were coordinating, organized, experienced, and they were closing in. Her only advantage was the terrain. She slipped silently toward the back wall where a loose board hid a narrow exit. Her grandmother had used it once during a wildfire. Mara prayed it still opened. She pressed her shoulder against the board. At first, it didn't budge. Panic surged. Then, with a dry crack, it gave way. Cold air rushed through. Rowan darted out first, disappearing into the shadowed crevice behind the shack. Mara grabbed the gold, slinging it over her shoulder, and squeezed through the gap. Snow splintered beneath her boots. She slid down a short incline, pressing herself against the rock. Voices approached the shack. "She's inside," one man said. Another answered. "Good. We box her in until the buyer gets here." Mara's blood chilled. Buyer. Someone wealthier, more dangerous, pulling the strings. She darted along the rock wall, staying low. Rowan guided her through the narrow ravine behind the station. The path was treacherous, slick with hidden ice, but it concealed her well. She moved quickly, heart racing as shouts echoed from the shack. The men had realized she was gone. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Their beams swept across the ridge, searching. Mara pressed herself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. Rowan remained perfectly still, eyes locked on the lights. "Spread out!" a voice barked. "She couldn't have gone far." Mara felt their urgency. They were getting desperate. She waited until the lights passed, then bolted deeper into the ravine. Snow crunched violently under her boots, but she couldn't slow down. The cold gnawed at her face. Her breath crystallized in the air. Then, rounding a sharp bend, she froze. A narrow cave mouth yawned in the rock ahead, an old bear den long abandoned. Mara hesitated. She didn't like cave shelters. Too unpredictable, too easy to trap. But with men closing in behind her, she had no choice. She ducked inside, Rowan following closely. The darkness swallowed them. The cave smelled of earth and old winter. The den was shallow but dry, its floor packed with ancient leaves and dust. Mara crouched behind a natural rock pillar, listening as footsteps approached the ravine entrance. Flashlights swept the walls outside. She gripped the gold tightly and forced her breathing to slow. The men murmured among themselves, arguing about which direction she could have taken. One suggested searching lower. Another insisted she'd doubled back. Their disorganization gave her a sliver of hope. Eventually, their voices faded. She waited longer, 10 minutes, then 15, until she was sure they had moved on. Only then did she stand. Her limbs were stiff from cold. She stepped to the cave entrance and peered out. The ravine was dim, touched only by the faint moonlight slipping through storm clouds. Her breath eased when she saw no figures moving across the slope. The forest beyond seemed peaceful again. Too peaceful. Mara knew better than to trust quiet in these mountains. She turned to Rowan. "We need answers," she whispered. She looked down at the gold. The symbols etched into each bar almost seemed to shimmer, a language she couldn't read, a message locked in metal. If she couldn't decipher it, someone else would. She realized there was one person who might know more, an old cartographer who lived near the abandoned mining road, a recluse like herself, a man who once spent his life mapping forgotten tunnels and lost passages beneath the mountains. People called him strange, maybe even unstable, but he knew the old legends better than anyone. Mara bit her lip. Going to him meant exposing herself, trusting someone she barely knew. But she was out of choices. Rowan nudged her knee, as if urging her onward. She nodded. Dawn was approaching. If she moved fast, she could reach the cartographer's cabin by midday. The storm clouds began to thin as she traveled east along the creek bed, avoiding open trails. Rowan stayed close, occasionally stopping to listen. The forest woke slowly, branches creaking under the weight of fresh snow. Mara's thoughts churned with every step. Why had the chamber been warm? Why did the carvings feel alive? Why did the gold vibrate beneath her touch? And why did those men know exactly where to look? The mountain held answers, but it refused to give them easily. She pulled her coat tighter around her, the gold pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat. As the sun crept over the horizon, coloring the snow with muted gold, she approached a clearing where the old cartographer's cabin stood, half collapsed, leaning like it might exhale and fall any second. Smoke drifted from the chimney, meaning he was home. Mara slowed, nerves twisting inside her. She didn't trust easily anymore, but she needed him. Needed someone who could read the language carved in ancient stone. She stepped onto the creaking porch, Rowan at her heel. She lifted her hand to knock, only for the door to open before she touched it. The old man stared at her knowingly. His eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone his age, gleaming with recognition she didn't understand. "You found it," he said, voice low and certain. Mara froze, breath catching. The old man stepped aside. "Come inside before they see you. They're closer than you think." A cold shiver ran through her. He knew about the men. He knew about the gold. He knew she would come. Rowan growled softly, sensing tension. Mara clutched the wrapped bars instinctively. "How do you know all this?" she whispered. The old man met her gaze, expression grave. "Because, Mara, that gold isn't the treasure. It's the warning." The old cartographer stepped back, gesturing for Mara to enter the dim, cluttered cabin. She hesitated long enough to check the silent forest behind her, then crossed the threshold, Rowan slipping in at her heel. The door closed with a soft thud, shutting out the cold and the danger stalking it. The inside smelled of smoke, ink, old books, and something metallic, faint, but familiar. The cartographer motioned toward a table covered in maps and yellowed journals. "Put it down," he said, pointing to the wrapped gold. Mara clutched it tighter. "You haven't answered my question." He sighed. "I know, but you came here for the truth." She placed the bundle gently on the table. The man unwrapped the cloth with meticulous care, revealing the gleaming bars. His fingers traced the engravings reverently. "I've spent 40 years studying this language," he murmured, "long before anyone believed me, long before I knew it would matter." Mara crossed her arms, tension coiling in her spine. "What is it? A map?" The old man shook his head, eyes narrowing. "A seal." Mara frowned. "A seal for what?" He looked up slowly. "For a vault buried beneath this mountain, and that vault contains something far more dangerous than gold." The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. Mara felt a shiver crawl down her neck. Rowan growled softly at the man, sensing Mara's unease. The cartographer lifted one hand pacifyingly. "I'm not your enemy, but the men following you, they know the truth too, or at least enough of it to be reckless." He pointed at the bars. "These carvings aren't decoration. They're binding symbols. Keys meant to keep the vault sealed, not open it." Mara's voice tightened. "So if they get all of them, they won't just find treasure," he said. "They'll unleash something that should never wake." Mara swallowed hard, unease settling deep in her chest. "What's inside the vault?" The old man hesitated, eyes clouding with memories. "Before the mines shut down, workers found an underground structure, not human-made, not from our time. Some say it was a tomb. Others, a chamber of power. Whatever it was, those who opened it didn't survive long. The mountain was sealed, and the keys, these bars, were hidden across the cliffs." Mara's breath quickened. "Then why leave them?" He gave a sad smile. "Some secrets aren't meant to be destroyed, only guarded." The cabin trembled suddenly, a faint vibration rolling through the floorboards. Lantern light flickered. Mara stiffened. "What was that?" The old man listened, jaw tightening. "They're close, and they're not empty-handed." Outside, a distant rumble echoed across the ridge, vehicles approaching. Not snowmobiles, something heavier. Rowan growled, pacing. Mara's pulse skyrocketed. "If they're after the vault, we can't let them have these." The cartographer nodded. "But we can't destroy them, either. The mountain reacts to the symbols. If you break the seal, you risk weakening the barrier." Mara clenched her fists. "Then what do we do?" The cartographer stepped to a chest beneath his workbench, unlocking it with shaking hands. Inside lay a worn, leather-bound notebook filled with hand-drawn diagrams of the vault. Arcs, spirals, and ancient symbols covered every page. "This is the only copy," he whispered. "The maps to the vault entrances, the layout, the fail-safes left behind." He handed it to her. "Take it." Mara blinked. "Why me?" The man held her gaze. "Because you found the first seal. The mountain chose you." She laughed bitterly. "The mountain didn't choose anything. I just wanted to walk the ridge." "Exactly," he said softly. "You weren't looking for power. That's why it found you." Before she could respond, a sharp knock rattled the door. Mara froze. Rowan lunged toward it, barking fiercely. The cartographer motioned frantically for silence. Another knock, harder, then a voice. "Open up. We know she's in there." Mara's blood ran cold. She recognized that voice, the leader of the group chasing her. Calm, smooth, confident. A man used to being obeyed. The cartographer whispered, "There's a hidden exit beneath the floor." Mara glanced around, hands trembling. "Then let's go." But the old man shook his head. "I'll buy you time." Her stomach dropped. "No, I'm not leaving you." He smiled sadly. "I've run from this long enough." The door splintered as something heavy slammed into it. The cartographer shoved Mara toward a trapdoor hidden beneath a wolfskin rug. Rowan darted ahead, sniffing the cold air below. Mara grabbed the old man's wrist. "Come with me." He shook his head firmly. "If they catch us together, they'll take the bars from you. Alone, you still have a chance." The door cracked again, wood splitting. The cartographer pressed the notebook into her hands. "Whatever's in that vault, promise you won't let them wake it." Her throat tightened. "I promise." He nodded once, then shoved her through the opening. She dropped into a narrow stone passageway, landing hard on her knees. Rowan jumped after her. Above, boots crashed through the door. She heard shouting, then the old man's voice raised defiantly. She wanted to climb back, wanted to help. But Rowan tugged at her coat, urging her forward. She swallowed her guilt and forced herself to run. The passage twisted sharply, lined with old mining timbers. Cobwebs brushed her face. The sound of boots echoed overhead, muted but relentless. She clutched the notebook and the gold, every breath sharp and icy. The passage opened onto a snowy slope. Mara crawled out into the freezing air just as gunshots cracked behind her. She jolted, heart hammering. Rowan barked anxiously, circling her as she scrambled to her feet. Smoke rose from the cartographer's cabin, glowing orange against the snow. Mara's stomach twisted, not just with fear, but with grief. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Breath trembling, she didn't have time to mourn. The men would find the passage. They'd follow. She ran, sliding down the slope, trusting Rowan to guide her. The notebook thumped against her side, the gold heavy on her back. She didn't know where she was running, only that she had to stay ahead. The forest thickened as she descended, branches snagging her coat. Snow clouds broke apart overhead, letting pale sunlight spill across the ridge. Her breath came in ragged bursts. She didn't stop until Rowan barked sharply, signaling danger. She tensed. Ahead, the forest opened into a clearing she recognized, the spot where the old mining tracks converged. And there, half buried in snow, stood an enormous metal hatch. Not natural, not recent, a vault entrance. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. "They're already here." Fresh footprints circled the hatch. Tools lay scattered, drills, pry bars, heavy equipment. The men had been preparing to force it open. Mara's chest tightened with dread. If they opened the vault without the seals, Whatever was inside could break free, or decay, and she didn't want to imagine either outcome. The ground vibrated faintly under her feet. Rowan whimpered, backing away from the hatch. Mara gripped the notebook with trembling fingers. The diagrams showed a control panel, pressure sensitive, activated only when all seals were correctly placed. Without them, forcing the hatch would destabilize the chamber. "This mountain will collapse on all of us," she whispered. She needed to stop them. Somehow, before they returned. She crept closer to the hatch, scanning the tree line for movement. Silence pressed around her, heavy and fragile. Then she saw them, 2 figures emerging from the trees on the opposite side of the clearing. The leader walked with calm certainty, a pistol holstered at his hip, expression unreadable. A second man carried a duffel bag of tools. They hadn't seen her yet. She ducked behind a rusted mining cart, forcing herself to breathe slowly. She had the gold. She had the notebook. She had knowledge. But she had no weapon, and no help but Rowan. She whispered, "We need a distraction." Rowan's ears twitched. He darted out suddenly, barking loudly from the tree line opposite Mara's hiding place. The men reacted instantly, guns raised, bodies tense. "There! Move!" They sprinted toward the sound. Rowan vanished into the brush, fast as a shadow. Mara seized the moment. She rushed to the hatch, placing the gold bars into the carved slots shown in the diagrams. The symbols aligned perfectly, glowing faintly as she pressed them in. The metal vibrated beneath her hands. A soft chime resonated from deep within the mountain. The seal recognized her touch. The hatch remained closed, but locked itself against forced entry. She shoved the final bar into place, just as a shout erupted behind her. "Stop!" The leader had returned faster than she expected. He raised his gun, eyes flashing with fury and fear. "Step away from the hatch." Mara froze, breathing hard. Rowan reappeared at her side, growling low. The man gestured sharply with his weapon. "Don't make this difficult. You have no idea what you're interfering with." Mara steadied her voice despite the tremor inside her. "I know exactly what I'm interfering with. Something your employer shouldn't have." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand. This could change everything." "Or end it," Mara countered. The man's expression flickered. Anger, desperation, something almost like regret. "We don't want to open it," he said finally. "We want to contain it, secure it properly." Mara narrowed her eyes. "If that were true, you wouldn't have chased me through a storm." He hesitated. "We couldn't risk you running to the wrong people." She almost laughed. "Who? The ones who don't want the mountain to collapse?" He stepped closer. She stepped back. Rowan bared his teeth. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Give me the notebook, or someone else will come who won't ask." Mara glanced at the hatch. The seal glowed softly, like a heartbeat carved into metal. She realized suddenly that she had leverage, not with weapons, but with knowledge. "This vault stays closed," she said, "and the mountain stays intact. That's my price." The man exhaled slowly. "You think you can bargain? You're one woman." Mara lifted her chin. "One woman who knows more than you do, and who knows this mountain better than all of you." Silence stretched between them, taut and uncertain. Then, unexpectedly, the man holstered his gun. "Fine," he said. "We back off, but you leave the gold." Mara hesitated. The gold wasn't just treasure, it was a key and a warning. But if taking it put everyone at risk, she could let it go. She removed the bars she'd placed, handing them slowly to the man. Rowan stayed tense but silent. The man accepted the gold with a solemn nod. "We'll safeguard it," he said. And the vault stays sealed. Agreed? Mara's eyes narrowed. Agreed, as long as you do your part. He nodded again, signaling to his partner. They backed away from the hatch, retreating toward the trees. For a moment, Mara thought it was over. But as the men disappeared into the forest, the hatch pulsed once more, humming low and deep. The ground trembled beneath Mara's boots. Rowan whimpered. The glow faded slowly, like a sleeping creature returning to slumber. Mara placed a trembling hand on the cold metal. "Rest," she whispered. The mountain quieted. She took a long breath, feeling exhaustion wash through her. The cartographer's warning echoed in her mind. Some secrets aren't meant to be destroyed, only guarded. She turned to Rowan. "Let's go home." His tail wagged, weakly. Together, they walked back toward the trees, leaving the vault asleep beneath the snow. By the time Mara reached her cabin, the storm had passed and a pale dawn stretched across the sky. She lit a fire, fed Rowan, and finally allowed herself to sink into the chair by the window. The mountain stood silent outside, vast, ancient, unknowable. She closed her eyes, the notebook resting on her lap. She could have left it behind, but she didn't, because the mountain had chosen her, not to open anything, but to protect it, and she would. Whatever secrets lay in the dark, whatever power slept beneath the cliffs, Mara Elling would stand guard, not for fortune, not for fear, but because some promises bind deeper than gold, and she had made hers.